Okay, I think we're live. Welcome back, committee members. I hope you had a good lunch. So our next topic that we'll be addressing is kind of a broad category of education. We'll hear an update from our community colleges. We've got someone on the agenda to talk about recalibration, and then just some other special kind of education projects. So with that, I see President of CWC, Brad Tyndall, on the line, and then we did have I see my good friend Ivan Posey there as well. So welcome, gentlemen. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you have received our letter that Ivan, Mr. Posey, and I have presented. And what we just want to do is we know that things are always on a tight schedule. So we just want to point out a couple things because we know y'all can read, but I also know you're busy and you probably skim like I do. So I'm going to point things out a little bit for you. But so the way Ivan, Mr. Posey, and I thought we would handle this today is I'd kind of go first, and then he would kind of go second. I'm doing pretty much reflections on the first part of the material we submitted, and Mr. Posey, Ivan would do the second part. And I don't know if you all know, but Ivan asked me to mention to everyone that he did have an operation on his ears, and his hearing is coming back, but it's not all the way there. So just keep that in mind when you speak. To speak loudly, clearly, and you might have to repeat if you have to ask a question. So it might be better to hold questions to the end, but we're obviously at your leisure, Madam Chair, Mr. Co-Chair. So without further ado, let me just say that in the materials that we submitted, I guess the important point would be that some of the information at the top. Something to keep in mind, we all know that the state is experiencing a fiscal crisis. Things are tight. There is a special committee for community college funding and governance in operation. So there are discussions about funding and funding cuts. There's discussions about revenue sources, whether that be, statewide mill levies to certain counties and, potential for revenue from sales tax and things like that. There's also discussions about possibly should there be consolidation or restructuring. And so I wanted to make sure that this committee and that the Wind River Indian Reservation, more importantly and broadly, isn't forgotten in those discussions. And I know this group doesn't forget those things, but I just want to kind of present ammunition, if you will, for the case of just really keeping in mind things that CWC is doing that we hope don't get disrupted in our service to the reservation and the reservation populations. And so first off, I as president have taken this role of serving the reservation very, very seriously. The reservation is an important part of our state. It's certainly at the heart of Fremont County, but we also serve Hot Springs and Teton County as well. But our reservation students and population in terms of not only education, but economic development is critical. And what I tell people quite all the time is that when the reservation thrives, we all thrive. We know that we're a state of the cowboys, but we are the cowboys and, respectfully said, and the Indians. And when we all thrive, it not only helps economic development and jobs and helps all our social ills, because economic development cures so many of those ills. But in terms of Fremont County, and even in terms of a thriving community together, if the reservation thrives, I would argue Fremont County, the region, and the whole state thrive. And so it's very important, I think, strategically, as an area goes, to really keep an eye on and focus on is the reservation. And so some of the concerns we have, we know there's cuts coming. We've already taken a lot of cuts and more cuts coming. But to keep in mind that I think we do some critical work that you'll see in the letter that you got, a lot of really good work that we've accomplished, major things, structural things, not just a lot of small things. And so to keep that in mind, that hopefully as their budget cut discussions or revenue discussions, you keep in mind the costs and benefits for our service to the reservation. In terms of governance, my concerns are that as people think like, well, let's put this college over there and under there and maybe consolidate these two, or maybe we should get rid of the community college commission and try something different. My perspective, having worked in various states, is that governance is not the solution for funding. Funding is a problem, funding / revenues, and budget cuts, and then governance is you're focusing on efficiencies and things like that. And frankly, what we have now is a good system, and I'm a little bit concerned that people might want to try something new, or why don't we do this, forgetting that we could really disturb the apple cart in terms of what we at Central Wyoming College have going with the reservation. And both I and Ivan will talk about this a little bit. Now, I mentioned that we're trying to do substantive big things and a lot of smaller things. And one of the biggest things that I'm proud of, well, really 2 or 3 really big things. And one of them is that we are now what is called an Asante school, Native American serving, non-tribal, we're not a tribal college, institution. And that took a lot of doing to get, just like it being African American serving or a Latino or Hispanic serving institution. This designation was not easy. We had to basically go through quite a few, not only hoops, but exceptions, because somebody has a model in their mind of what the ideal in the Asante school would look like. And we didn't exactly meet all the criteria, and we argued, and they said, yeah, you're right. And so we're very proud of that. And that designation only stays with us if we're not subsumed by someone else. So obviously, I'm not thrilled about changing the structure of Central Wyoming College, because I think we have a lot of good things going, especially in terms of service to the reservation. The other thing really particularly proud of is the Bachelor of Applied Science with that emphasis area in tribal leadership. I really believe, I'm a PhD in economics, and my background was in overseas development and developing nations, is that the cornerstone for our economic development, some people say, oh, it's property rights, and that is important, or it's the rule of law and legislative and structure. I go, sure, that's really important, but you never get even the bare bone structure for economic growth if you don't have the leaders to get you there, to get together, to draft those, to change things as necessary. And it's clear to me that a future cadre of leaders for both tribes is critical for the future. And I'm very, very excited about this program that we started this fall. And we have 15 students in that first cohort for this tribal leadership program. And I think this is huge, because if you have good leaders, you got a good future. Then you could build the other things like the law, the legislation, the land tenure system, and everything else. But without a good cadre of educated leaders, how are you going to get there? The third big thing I'm proud of is that we've started what we call CWC Wind River. We have CWC Riverton, CWC Landers, CWC Jackson, etc. And we dabbled with the reservation, and we say, no, it's not dabbling. We need to have a CWC Wind River, and we offer classes in Ethity and Fort Washakie. We very much try to make sure we always serve respectfully with both tribes in collaboration. And I felt like we built some good relationships for doing that. And our perspective is to recognize the sovereignty of the nations, of the peoples, the tribes, and come in partnership. It's a partnership model. So even what we have with CWC River it's a cost and revenue sharing model, where the tribes will find the adjunct and structure, provide the location. Those are costs. And so what we do with the revenue is saying, you keep the tuition revenue. The state revenue, we shouldn't be handing out. We keep the state reimbursement revenue. But we have a model that we've built, and I think it's a great collaborative model. And these are things, like I said, I don't want to disrupt that apple cart. And I feel like we've really come a long, long way. One thing people don't recognize too is we have a whole lot in our program in the person of Teresa Spoonhunter, a woman, female, PhD, recognized nationally, is our lead faculty. And I always tell her, please, Lord, don't leave. You're too important to us. and you do such great work. And you can see in the information I submitted that we do a lot of research, science, technology, engineering, and math oriented. We have high expectations and we're making progress, and we recognize that indigenous knowledge and indigenous agriculture, indigenous understanding of ecology is science. And that has been largely Dr. Spoonhunter's approach. And you can see in partnership with UW, and we love UW. We have so many joint grants and projects together that we've done a lot of really, really good things, from even helping, Jason Baldez and the work he's doing with the reintroduction of the buffaloes, and so many more things than I list here. But I listed some of the science that we've done, some of the grants that we've done of late. Economic development's the last thing I'll speak to before I hand the mic over to Mr. Posey, is that economic development, in my mind, is the fundamental paradigm. And it's through mutual respect and helping the reservation grow as it wants to, not imposed by my notions of what the tribes want to do or could want to do. But economic development is the paradigm. And so Dr. Spoonhunter has been working with another professor of ours, Kyle Trumbull, in conjunction with UW, our very important partner, for this reservation economic development workshops with money that UW raised. There was a startup challenge and $25,000 in awards presented to the business ideas on pitch day. And we feel that was really, really successful. And there was a lot of excitement about people who want to start up businesses on the reservation. And so this is the type of things that I'm really proud of. I really am proud of. This is important to me personally and our college. Ivan has many other things that he can point out. But before we pass the mic to Mr. Posey, Madam Chair, I'd be glad to take any questions, or we could just go immediately to Ivan, as you like.
Thank you, Brad. That was a good update. Let's pause for some questions. Committee members, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Tyndall, or President Tyndall? Okay, seeing none. Let's hear from Ivan Posey, please.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me okay?
Maybe a little louder.
Yeah, I can hear pretty good, but again, thank you, Madam Chair and other co-chair, and my good buddy Kale Case there, and my sister Andy over there. Good to see you guys this afternoon, and my friend Lloyd, and sometime I'll get to meet the rest of the committee. As Brad mentioned, we have done a lot of things with the tribal community. We had signed MOUs with each tribe regarding CWC Wind River and the establishment of holding more classes on the reservation. We got support from them, as you all probably know, regarding the BAS program that we started here this fall. And that was a process that took probably 7 or 8 years, probably before Brad and I was even here, but it actually came to fruition, and I think it's going to be good. We're still kind of getting our footing, as we all know, because of the COVID and the pandemic that's hitting us hard. And, it's been kind of a strange semester. As you also probably know, we're going to stage 1 in our COVID plan, where the students will be the last days of classes is today on campus. They had another week next week to go ahead and to move forward before they broke for Thanksgiving, but the emergency response team bumped that up. So it's been really hard to get footing with some of the United Tribes Club and some of those things that we'd like to do community-wise. The Institute of Tribal Learning, I'll briefly cover that. It was something that was established in 2017 with a team of us here, myself, Teresa, our Dr. Spoonhunter, Dr. Tyndall, Dr. Wells, and we decided to move forward to start a process that looks more towards traditional and cultural stuff that's not learned in textbooks. And it's been a desire of mine for many years to try to establish that even when I was with my own tribe there. But it came to fruition here, and it's been totally funded by outside people. It's private donors from Jackson and some other foundations that have given money to spend, whether that's on our powwow, whether it's the speaker series, um, the the new framing and the new uh, makeup of the intertribal center here, and we hope to have a reopening or to highlight what we've done in this center here, because that was the intention, is to foster better relations between tribal and non-tribal community, but also to highlight what makes us Indians. And we have speaker series with John Washke and uh, with Marlon Spoonhunter, and we had him here and in Jackson. So we're trying to spread the word across the state that we want to be the center of excellence to support that type of information out to people who need to learn about us. I always talk about the joke where when I worked for the governor as a first liaison way back in 2003, but I said I went to the Department of Tourism, and a lady asked me what kind of permit they needed to come to the reservation. So I said I sold her one, but that was the joke. But I didn't. So it shows that there's a lot of information that a lot of people don't know about the tribes, the structure, the history, the contemporary issues, and we hope to provide that. Um, we're going into uh, providing information like to the Riverton Police Department. We did a cultural sensitivity um, training for them in July. We did some training over in the town of Jackson regarding tribalism and what it is to be an Indian. And so it's going to get there, I really truly believe. And that's good not only for people to know about us, but also our own tribal people, maybe the young people that haven't had that fostering growing up or know some of the stories. Maybe there's an avenue where we utilize tribal community members to teach them that. And they may not be non-credit classes, but it's a term of education. We've been working with tribes as well on transportation issues for students. Of course, we are going to an MOU with Wind River Tribal Transportation. That's kind of on hold now, seeing that the students won't be here the rest of the semester, but we'll continue to move forward with that. We have an advisory committee here, American Indian Advisory Council, actually, and it's made up of a dozen tribal members who come in every other month, and we have lunch and we discuss issues. And we actually had our last meeting a couple of weeks ago here in ITAC. Of course, we won't resume those till after the first of the year, not unless we do that through Zoom next month. So things are moving along pretty well. We've recently hired Rory Tendor as a American Indian Student Service Coordinator here, and she's I know she's had her struggles with the pandemic and stuff, but she's been doing a great job in terms of addressing tribal students' needs, and it's great to have her here. Um, we'll see how that position really enhances our relations with the tribes and how we could identify and address some of the issues regarding education here. When we had our last revenue issue a few years ago, and many people moved away from this community, as Kale and Andy and Lloyd know. I said about this, I don't think there's very few tribal members that are moving. This is our home. So I think with the BAS, with the Institute of Tribal Learning, I think it's a very good approach to stronger relations. And actually, CWC has taken the lead in many of these across the state. Kathy and I, Dr. Wells and I, we've traveled across the state, and we still have a few more colleges to go through to present the speaker series also. So other community college are interested in what we're doing here. And like I said, we hope to provide that training not only to maybe new teachers on a reservation, utilizing experiences from our tribal members to help teach, but also people that are moving into our community that we could provide this information to, whether they're from the banks or real estate or whatever. We'd like to become the center of excellence for that. So Rory and Teresa are doing great work. They're always busy, and I think we'll continue to make great strides here in our tribal relations and for the college and for education in Wyoming. Thank you.
If I could just close up, Madam Chair. Say
That's
it
great.
last. So the Institute of Tribal Learning is the last piece of the thing I'm extremely proud of. That's something that, as Ivan said, started in 2017. And it's really all things non-credit that really tries to create an environment that is safe and flourishing in the realm of discussions. And that last piece that Ivan talked about, realtors coming in and teachers, is really what we kind of refer to informally on campus as kind of Wind River 101. What do you need to know? People coming going, do I need a visa to go on the reservation? And can I say this and do that? And I think in terms of just feeling safe and free and thriving, the Institute of Tribal Learning has done very great in that regard. And we hope that it spills over on a campus. And I believe it has. The last thing I want to mention is that our student graduation rate from our American Indian students has gone up. Our number of students who graduate with honors has gone up, as we show in the report. And we're up to 15%, which almost slightly under 15%, but we're keeping pushing that number up. And so the arrows are going in the right direction in terms of our benchmarks. And so we know we have more work to do. There's other things you can see in the report. And I always feel personally kind of inadequate because I see that list and I'm kind of kidding myself because I know there's so much more to do. So I'm proud, but I'm also half embarrassed that I think we should be doing so much more, but we'll continue. So Madam Chair, if anyone has any questions, we'd be glad to try to answer them.
That sounds great. Committee members, do you have any questions? Representative Sweeney?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just am curious. At one point, we talked about school teachers, educators, trying to put that program together so that they didn't have to necessarily leave their community and go to Laramie for that degree program. Is there any possible link there yet?
Madam Chair, Representative Sweeney, the perfect question. So we were approved by the state last year in the legislative session to offer up to 2 Bachelor's of Applied Science degrees. And the other one that we're salivating over was teacher education, largely to grow our own for the reservation and the region. And as I understand from Dr. Wells, our chief academic officer, that a teacher education degree can exist within a Bachelor's of Applied Science. So our curriculum committee is looking at this, and we're in the hunt for funding right now. Be sure nice if the state would cut us a check, but I'm thinking this may not be the year that anybody's going to get a check for something new. But we are hoping, we're looking at the Daniels funds and other people, and we're still haven't announced whether we're going to officially go for that. It'd likely start with elementary ed. It's kind of the easier initial lift, but we are indeed looking at that.
Is there a follow-up question? Representative Larson?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a couple of questions, so if I could have a follow-up after this initial one. And Dr. Tyndall, could you give me a little more information on your Nancy designation. When was that put into place? Well, how long did it take to get it? And then when was it put into place? And, as I read your summary here, it says it allows more access to federal funds to better serve, such as, what are your plans for that? And then I hopefully have another follow-up question.
President Tyndall.
Madam Chair, Representative Larson. Yes, so the Nasanti process started about 2 or 3 years ago. We looked at it and see we didn't qualify, and we thought that was ridiculous. And so we contacted Senator Enzi's office, and he's a good friend, obviously, of everyone when you need somebody at a high level. And we kind of played it cautiously. He says, let's not play the Senator Enzi card until we have to, because some of the requirements, they say, well, you can get an exception. And I can't remember what those exceptions were. Certain percentages or things like that. And maybe our percentages weren't quite right. That 15% maybe needed to be 17 or something. I'm going, come on, we're doing what we can here. And so I think it was around December 2019 or so that we finally were given the approval. And we had a preliminary approval a couple months before that saying, give us some more information. And so sometime around last Christmas, if I recall correctly, and maybe Ivan can correct me, but that's my thinking. And immediately with that access, with that designation as a Nasanti school, we immediately applied for a grant, and it was called a Nasanti grant. And we got it. So we got $1.5 million. And what we plan to do, we've already hired a student, I call it a mother hen or a father hen position, and that's Rory Tindor, where we know that you need a welcoming environment, you need an auntie or an uncle, someone's going to help take care of you. And it's too much on Ivan. We've asked him to do everything and be everything, but that's just too much for one person. So we did hire Rory. We also are hiring a coordinator that will be housed in Ethity and Fort Washington, both locations with offices. And so that's going to be huge. We're also, with the Nasanti money, we could shift other monies around. So we will be providing transportation. That's a huge problem. Someone's car breaks down, or they're sharing a car or whatever it is. We now have transportation money. And our model now, and Ivan has been working on this, is to work with a Wind River Transportation Authority. But in the meantime, until we set up kind of routes and things like that, our model is basically you call us, we come and get you, and we drive you to class or drive you to Ethity or whatever it takes. We also have, I believe, Ivan, you might have to help me here. I think there's some scholarship dollars. There's some student emergency money to take care of things. 1.5 million, I'm trying to think what else we got, but I believe it's a 5-year grant. And so the biggest thing is that we get Rory Tindor and that position we're going to hire on the reservation. And Representative Larson, Madam Chair, that's my attempt at answering the question.
Thank you. And then, Madam Chairman, follow up on that. I'd like to go to your tribal leadership program, which I think is great. I would appreciate it if you could just maybe go into a little more detail on what are you teaching? Tell me some of the classes. That'd be interesting. And then it led me to say, so this will be a Bachelor's of Applied Science degree. Would they be able to take this then and transfer it down to university and get a bachelor's degree and perhaps move on to something like an MPA or something? Is it structured anywhere along those lines?
President Tyndall.
Madam Chair, Representative Larson. The lot of questions in there. So what this BAS with its emphasis in tribal leadership looks like is it isn't, first of all, an emphasis area. So there's about 15, 16 credits that are purely tribal focused. And there's also some electives, so they can even get more than that. So there's 2 tracks for this degree. One's for tribal leadership, and one of them is called entrepreneurship and business and entrepreneurship. And so to make this less confusing, let me kind of throw out some generalizations, which some people might want to slap my face because it's too general. But in a sense, it's a business-like degree, right? And it's with exactly the courses you need to develop in business. So it's designed to be that if you're a welder, we can help you be a welder manager and start a welding shop. If you're a reservation student and you want to thrive on the reservation and you want to rise up the ranks and be a future Northern Arapahoe chief CEO or a future business council member, this is the track for you. So it's flexible. And so the courses work in the core is you get classes in human resources. You get some classes in kind of basic business classes, because at some point someone's going to say, can you read a ledger? Do you understand a little bit about HR? You can't do that. You shouldn't say that. You can do this. And so there's components that it's helpful for someone just to kind of be able to be a leader regardless where you are. And then the electives and the specialization courses for the tribal leadership option gives you things on how the reservation works. There's a little bit of treaties and some backgrounds of things everybody should know, kind of what are the rights and what are the assumptions of how you function, especially with the federal government, but how does the tribe interact with the county, with the state, and I can't, it's not a field I'm strong in, but we try to give you information so that you understand how to function well on the reservation, whether that be tribal historic or THPO things, or whether it's taxes and whatnot and land tenure issues of what things and what approvals you need. So it tries to be very practical in orientation, and whether it transfers or not was kind of another question. And BAS honestly doesn't transfer well compared to a BS degree or a BA, Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. So its transferability is kind of hampered in the same way that AAS degrees, Associate of Applied Science, is hampered. If you have an AAS degree in welding and you think, oh, I'm going to become an English major at UW, good luck. Barely anything transfers. And by the way, when we hear horror stories of transfer to UW, mostly it's that, and that's nobody's fault except our communicating to people that that is not a degree that transfers. So the BAS transfers weekly to most schools. There are schools that do have a Master's of Applied Science. There are, I would say, a lot of these classes will transfer because they're kind of business-like courses, but it was designed really to be kind of an end degree, a terminal degree, and its transferability, I would just honestly say, is weak until you can build articulations and build your case that to a school that they should receive it better. Thank you.
Follow-up questions? Okay. Anything else that we want to hear from, or any closing remarks from CWC? Did you cover everything?
We covered everything, Madam Chair. We thank everyone for your time and your efforts and your good work, and good luck at the upcoming session.
Thank you. Before I let you go, I see we've got a few council members on the call, as well as Carlton Underwood, who I believe is on the CWC Board of Trustees. Welcome. Mr. Underwood, did you want to address us, or were you just listening in?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I actually was not aware of this meeting. I actually serve as the Chief Executive Officer for the Northern Arapahoe Tribe. And my boss is basically the chairman, Lee Swinner, asked me to be a part of this meeting. So I'm here just to listen in. I'm not here as a member of the Board of Trustees for CWC in that capacity. But just for clarification, I'm here for the on the tribe side.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and welcome to our meeting today. Any other council members have any questions for CWC? Okay, I don't see anyone. Thank you again for being here with us. Next on our agenda, we are going to get an update on recalibration. And for that, I see we have a representative from the Department of Education. Welcome, Kari.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the Select Committee. I'm Kari Akins. I'm the Chief Policy Officer at the Wyoming Department of Education, and was asked to just provide a quick update on recalibration. The biggest update is really that the main working of the bill has yet to occur. That will happen at their December meeting, December 17th and 18th. However, they have chosen a starting point for that draft bill, and that is working off of the evidence-based model, a departure from the legislative model. So in their meeting materials from their last meeting, that was Bill Draft 21 LSO 164. That is going to be their starting point. They also did make a decision to keep with their current method for the external cost adjustments, which is that there is no automatic external cost adjustment to the model, that any changes to the model through an external cost adjustment have to be brought forth before the legislature and voted on any year that that is proposed. So there was a choice there to do an auto increase. They chose to keep with the same method that has been utilized thus far, which is requiring that to be specifically voted on any year that external cost adjustment is asked for. At their next meeting, there will be further discussion around health insurance. There was some discussion among the select committee about looking at ways to make health insurance a categorical funded a categorical grant, not part of the block grant, or looking at a reimbursable model. So expecting there to be much more discussion about that. And we're, as a department, providing some more follow-up information. And then also the regional cost adjustment relevant to teacher salaries. There was a presentation at their last meeting on that, but and any actual decisions on the regional cost adjustment that was tabled to the December meeting. And so a lot of the things that were pushed to the December meeting were so that they could be sure that they received more public comment on that issue. But certainly a lot of decisions still left to be made by the select committee on school finance recalibration. And they will be working the bill in earnest December 17th and 18th. And I believe they have a light hold on December 19th in case they need to go a third day. So very hardworking committee, this one, looking at meeting the Saturday before Christmas. But with that, happy to take any questions that any members of this select committee may have about recalibration efforts thus far.
Committee members, do you have any questions? Thank you for that update, Kari. I've been listening and to those discussions as well, and we'll have a lot of work and a lot of discussion ahead of us. So thank you for that update. Do any tribal council members that we haven't part of the call or our Zoom meeting, do they have any questions for Kari? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for that update. Looking next on our agenda, we have a kind of a broad topic of education projects. And as this committee will recall, a few years ago, the legislature passed the Indian Education for All Act, which is a real great attempt to kind of modernize our social studies standards and making sure that we're not just talking about Native American history through one lens, and trying to make sure that it's a little bit more inclusive of today's contributions of Native people and actually reflects the views of Native people themselves. So with that, I know we've had a few presenters here. I don't know how you'd like to tackle this, but Shannon Smith from Wyoming Humanities, as well as a representative from, I'm looking for you, there you are, Terry Dugas from Wyoming Public Media, are both here. So with that, I'd welcome either of you. Please unmute yourself, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman Ellis and Chairman Larson. Terry, I'll jump in first and say a few words and allow you to take the technical reins after this. Thank you very much, committee, for allowing us to share with you some of the progress that the Wyoming Humanities Council, in partnership with many organizations around the state, has made to support the Indian Education for All initiative and to try to help Wyoming get more exposure to American Indian education and culture in general. In particular, committee members, we wanted to share with you a project that the Humanities Council received a grant from an out-of-state foundation to promote and help people understand Plains Indian Sign Language and the importance of this communication vehicle to multiple tribes throughout the United States, but in particular the Northern Great Plains. One of our board members is Willie LeClaire, who I think is quite familiar to most of you on the committee. And he is one of the few people who are fluent in Plains Indian Sign Language or Hand Talk. And he has consulted with us and recommended that we pursue developing a tool that can be used in multiple grade levels to teach this language, to teach how to use this sign language, and also make it available for adults to learn. So this is more than just creating a video. We're actually going to try to consult with some experts to create a tool that can be used throughout the school systems, not just in Wyoming, but for free, available to anybody who wants to learn this. Our primary partner in this is Terry Dugas and the Wyoming PBS system. He has worked with us, and his film team have worked with us to start what we call just the opening salvo in this. And of course, things were delayed because of all of us being homebound through the pandemic. But Mr. LeClaire was able to go into CWC, to the PBS headquarters, and be filmed. And so we've created kind of a little introductory film just to give you a sense and give others a sense of what this language is and how it works. Our goal is to use Willie as kind of the opening trainer in this, but we have funding to try to convene a very large group of people from around the region, particularly with an emphasis on the tribes that were engaged with the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie and Fort Bridger. So if we can get multiple tribes together and demonstrate how this language was used as an intertribal communication tool, that's really our dream. So Terry, I want to pass this on to you to share a little bit about how the project ensued and some of the ideas, and to share it with everybody.
Welcome, Terry.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, we are flirting with disaster. I am going to attempt to play a video over Zoom. I expect it to fail dramatically. However, the LSO has provided the members of the committee with a link, so you can watch this video at your convenience. Wyoming PBS actually has 4 total educational projects to let you know about. And so after this video, I'll call on Michelle Hoffman to talk about our Native American education learning modules. So we'll give this a try.
This is Affy. I'm not hearing any sound.
I'm not hearing you either, Terry.
Other
You're
side,
unmuted. There we go.
on my
I
mother.
bet if you unmute.
Let's try it that way. I'm not going to waste too much of y'all's time, but we'll try it once more, and I'll leave myself unmuted. I was
That'll
hoping
work.
to avoid feedback. So let me get this video reset. That will take just a second. Slow computers are the bane of my life.
Must be government property.
I'd like,
And now we will try this once more.
to introduce myself. My name is Willie LeClaire. I'm a half-breed. On this side, on my half-breed side, on my father's side, he was Indian. On the other side, on my mother's side, she was white. I was born on the reservation that we as Indian people recall the Wind River Indian Reservation. I, as an Indian, was given an Indian name. Tall pine tree. The medicine man that gave me that name, he said, you, as tall pine, will be there to look over the people. A sign for yes. Yes, I took it. I talk with my hands in the Indian sign language, or the hand talk, since I was 4 snows, 4 winters. I was 4 years old when I understood how to talk with my hands. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Willie Clare.
We are particularly interested in this project because when the hunters and trappers moved into this area, they didn't know any of the Native American languages, and there were multiple tribes in this area. And so hand talk was the original means of communication between the whites moving into this area and the Plains Indian. And it's a dying language. And so we're very excited to work with Shannon and with Mr. LeClaire to do our small part in help preserving this.
Thank you. Mr. Dugas, I do have a question. Are there other universities or entities that are working to preserve this? Admittedly, I don't know much about this topic, and I think the work that you're doing is really exciting, but I'm just kind of curious what's out there already.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, I'll defer to Shannon on the academic background on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Chairman Larson. Thank you for the question, Madam Chairwoman. There is no extensive training system developed. There's some fascinating history, including Chief Washakie being one of the earliest trainers of multiple tribes and multiple non-Indian people who interacted. We are going to try to replicate a convening that happened in 1930 that was hosted by the Blackfeet tribe, and there were several National Park Service type of people engaged with this, and there are in the Library of Congress recordings of how this convening occurred to demonstrate the different tribes and how they communicated with each other, because as Terry mentioned, it was the tool that was used to communicate with trappers and early Europeans came here, but it was also the vehicle for trade and intercommunication amongst tribes from all the regions. Coronado wrote in 1540 in his diary that he did not require translators because the hand talk was so easy for him and his men to follow. So there's a great history. Chairwoman Ellis, there are several research projects, but there is, to my knowledge, no one that is working currently on creating a flexible tool. And we are not going to be the experts on this, but we visualize something on the order of how American Sign Language is taught and how we can create some kind of tool that can use our phones and our devices. And that's really the vision. And we have raised a pretty significant amount of funding to use for the technology of this. But thank you very much for that question.
That's certainly exciting. Thank you for that information. Committee members, do you have any questions? I know we've got Kari Eakins also still on our call here. And I believe she's got an update about how the Department of Education's been implementing this particular act. So Kari, would you like to give us an update? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just happy to give a little bit of an update here on IndiaNet for All implementation from the department's perspective. As you mentioned, of course, it was in 2017 House Enrolled Act 119 that was passed, and there were several requirements of the department and the State Board of Education in that bill. The first was to convene the Social Studies Standards Review Committee to review and revise the standards as directed in that legislation. That committee did consist of a total of 24 members, including 7 Northern Arapaho, 5 Eastern Shoshone, 1 Northern Cheyenne, and 1 Pawnee Navajo. Also, it was 21 educators and administrators from 14 Wyoming school districts, and the director of the Native American Education Research and Cultural Center at the University of Wyoming, as well as a cross-section of stakeholders across the state. So tried to have as much diversity as possible in that committee to review the standards. And so in July of 2018, the State Board of Education was able to adopt additions to the Wyoming Social Studies Content and Performance Standards. Previously, there had been 101 social studies standards throughout all of K-12. 25 standards were added and 39 standards were amended through the review for Indian Education for All. And so those standards became effective on August 15th of 2018 and are to be fully implemented in school districts by the beginning of the 21-22 school year. So we are looking at next fall for these to be fully implemented within school districts. Also, the legislation did require for materials and resources to assist school districts with implementation to be listed on the WDE website. And so we do have that, a web page on our site that provides that information. And that is included in the memo that Superintendent Balo provided to this committee that's in your meeting materials. So looking at successes, generally, we have seen an increase in attendance at our Native American Education Conference as we have looked to focus some of those sessions and actually provided a conference strand specifically for Indian Education for All. So at the 2019 conference, we had a record number of registrants at 649. For 2020, we did have to move that conference to a virtual setting, but we still had roughly 500 attend. And so just so you know, through the earlier years of the conference, we were kind of hovering at around 300 to 400 attendees. So we've definitely seen increased and renewed interest in the Native American Education Conference as a result of this initiative. Additionally, we've held 2 social studies workshops, one in March of 2019 in Lander and one in January of 2020 at CWC that provide specific instruction to teachers on Indian Education for All. We've also have partnered with the American Institutes for Research and received a grant from the National Science Foundation that's just under $1 million to partner with both tribes on the Wind River Indian Reservation, the tribal schools, and other partners to develop computer science curriculum that's integrated into Indian Education for All in grades 3 through 5. So work began on that in October of 2019 and will continue through September of 2022. So the initial lesson plans are now being vetted by educators in tribal schools, and once they have finished their vetting of it, then we'll move it to a larger focus group and hoping to have more lesson plans developed through that help meet the requirements of Indian Ed for All and meet the requirements of the implementation of computer science at the same time. Additionally, we have been adding lesson plans to our Open Education Resources platform, Open Range Wyoming. And I mean, I've already mentioned, you know, the partnerships, I think, are one thing that we consider a huge success thus far in implementation of Indian Ed for All. I mean, we've got great partners just here today before the committee, but also I think we've seen better partnerships between school districts that are on the reservation versus other school districts around the state. Seeing some wonderful partnerships there, allowing for field trips for students to be able to see and experience the Wind River Indian Reservation firsthand. Obviously with UW, Central Wyoming College, Wyoming PBS, WyoHistory.org, Wyoming Humanities. These are all folks who have stepped up big time, honestly, through providing, either staff time and resources, just straight up substantial financial support. There's been a lot of, I would say, just increased collaboration among those partnerships as we work to implement Indian Ed for All. And there's several more that I could go on about Wind River Hotel and Casino, Buffalo Bill Center of the West. It's been wonderful, and I think that's a big success. Looking at some challenges, certainly COVID-19 creates a challenge in just about every area of education, including an implementation of Indian Ed for All. And we have seen that it has been a tougher transition in some areas of the state to virtual meetings because of access issues. And certainly, as we're attempting to develop more lesson materials for teachers, we were hoping to take advantage of folks that live on the Wind River Indian Reservation, and having the stay-at-home orders and needing to keep everybody safe obviously takes precedent over the development of some of those materials, quite honestly, right now. And we just have teachers that are having to focus on, just getting through this school year and not necessarily having the time to be able to develop the lessons for this. And since we're still in the implementation phase, they know they have a little bit more time, but we have seen a little bit of delay on some of that work. We did have to delay another one of our social studies workshops. I mentioned before we've held the two. The third, we're working to transition virtually, but that has been delayed. For the grant with the American Institutes of Research, there were supposed to be some visits that happened there. That's been delayed. We also had an elder project with technology and innovation in education, and some of that work has been delayed. So there's a lot of things that, when we look at our original timelines, we're not necessarily where we hoped we would be, but we do believe we're going to be able to get there in the end. And so I think our remaining challenge as we look to full implementation in the fall of 2021 is just the general need for more resources and lesson plans across all grade bands. What we're seeing from non-native teachers is they're hesitant to develop their own lessons on this material, and it's because they have the right heart about it. They want to make sure they get it right, but it means they're not confident enough to develop those materials on their own. That means that we're having to try to lean heavily on native teachers who, as I mentioned before, their plates are already very full as they're dealing with a very different school year. And so, the development of materials has been basically completely dependent on grant funds or other funds to help get this stuff developed. And so that is definitely a bit of a hindrance because it's asking teachers to go above and beyond what they're normally doing in their individual classrooms and take those materials and make them put them into a format that they can be used statewide. And that's not something that most teachers do on a regular basis, right? They maybe do stuff school-wide or district-wide. But once you are going for a statewide open education resource, then there's work that has to be done about making sure you don't have any license violations, and that it's not proprietary information or materials that you're accidentally sharing and telling everybody to use for free. So that just is, this has been a challenging school year in general. We're just also seeing that impact on the ability to develop some of the materials to help all teachers across the state be able to implement Indian Ed for All. But we are also seeing people get extremely creative on how they're rising to those challenges right now. And I would say overall, we're very encouraged by the interest that we've seen through the increase in attendance, also just the increase in the number of districts that are now participating in the Native American Education Conference and attending those social studies workshops. And we are in courses that have to be reviewed by the department, such as virtual courses. We are starting to see the incorporation of those additional social studies standards into those course syllabi. So that is very encouraging on our end, but just still work to be done as we work towards that full implementation by fall of 2021. And happy to take any questions that the select committee or council may have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Kari. That's a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions for Kari Eakins? Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have a question. I was trying to think of if I should say this or make it, but it's really a comment. And anybody from the committee or Kari, you could enlighten me. I was able to listen in for a bit to the recalibration committee meetings too. Back in October of 29, we were looking at the graphs there, and kind of what, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but looking at the graphs, you know, going into the budget cuts that we're going to have to do, the deficit, and looking at education, it seems to me on those graphs, it just kind of shouted out to me, and I just have to say it, for school districts to save money, their best bet is to hire Native American teachers, particularly Native American female teachers, because they're one of the lowest paid as far as teacher salaries go. But somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I was looking at the graphs, and I have to state that. That's what kind of shouted out to me when I was looking at the graphs and listening to the testimony on recal. Thank you.
Kari, do you have a response or a comment you'd like
Sure.
to?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Representative Clifford. So I will say that looking, we have a lot of concerns about our teacher pipeline in general, and where we're, you know, in our ability to hire qualified teachers and teachers that are reflective of Wyoming, which includes Native Americans. And so we know that for sure, we are trying to work with some of our teacher prep programs in the state on how to make sure that as we recruit teachers into the profession, which we realize is becoming more of a challenge in Wyoming, how do we make sure that you know, every demographic in the state is included in those recruiting efforts, and that they are being encouraged to join this profession where they can have a profound impact on their community.
Any other questions for any of our presenters? I know we've got Michelle Hoffman also from Public Media. Michelle, did you want to offer some comments?
I didn't know, Madam Chairman, I didn't know if you wanted me to present during this time. I also did sign up under the comment section, so whichever you prefer.
I think let's hear from you now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me a little bit of time to give you an update on the Wyoming PBS project, the Wind River Education Learning Modules. For those of you that have been on this committee for a while, this will be a little bit of a review and an update. And for the new legislators, I hope to give you a full picture of this project in a short amount of time. This venture was started approximately 7 years ago with a grant written by then Wyoming PBS General Manager Ruby Calvert. She had submitted a grant to the Wyoming legislature to fund 5 videos and 5 8th grade lesson plans concerning the Wind River Indian Reservation. The main focus of this grant was to have culturally relevant and historically accurate lesson plans written by Northern Arapaho and Eastern Shoshone educators. And these lesson plans would also be aligned to the Wyoming state standards and the Common Core standards, which then would be shared with other educators around the state. The grant was awarded and Ruby retired, and Terry Dugas took over the project. And since then, he has found a lot more funding for this project because, as you will hear, it's grown greatly. This original project of 5 videos, or what we call learning modules, and 5 lesson plans has grown over the years significantly, all in response to requests from our educators from across the state. Along with 8th grade lesson plans, they asked for 4th grade. They requested short plans. They requested longer plans. And then just in the last couple of years, we started receiving requests from high school. And so currently we host 6 main learning modules entitled Why Teach Native American History? Who are the people of the Wind River Reservation? Who are the Eastern Shoshone? Who are the Northern Arapaho? How does tribal government work on the Wind River Reservation? And preserving the ways, culture, and traditions. And if any of you've ever seen some of them, these videos, some of the members of this committee are featured in them. And so if you haven't seen them, you need to see Senator Case here on there. And so we've also added 9 additional learning modules to this project. So presently the site houses 15 learning modules for teachers in the state to use. We have a team of teachers from both the Eastern Shoshone and the Northern Arapaho tribes who have written a total of 51 lesson plans for the different grade levels. We have 4th grade, 8th grade, and currently adding 7 9th through 12th grade lesson plans, with 10 more coming soon. The 4th and 8th grade plans have been written to Wyoming State standards ranging from language arts, math, STEM, science, fine arts, and all the plans directly address the new Wyoming State Social Studies standards. 9th through 12th grade lesson plans will directly address the social studies standards only. We have many more videos that we're waiting to add to this site, but as Kari said earlier, because of COVID, our teachers are currently working within their own districts to provide online learning opportunities, and they have been a little stressed for time. So we have also developed parent guides for these 6 main learning modules, and all videos have a sheet where the teachers can look at this sheet and say, okay, here's all the new social studies standards and the old social studies standards. And this module lines up to this standard. So if they want to teach this standard, they look at this module and this lesson plan, and it addresses that. So it's an easy, teacher-friendly tool for them. And so in these times of virtual learning, Wyoming PBS is a leader with the implementation of the new social studies standards. And this project, Wyoming PBS has been ahead of the game for quite a few years. So I thank Terry for his continued support of this, and our teachers on the reservation for their hard work, and the teachers across the state for utilizing this tool. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for the update. Committee members, do you have any questions? Do any of the tribal council members we have on our Zoom have any questions? Just feel free to unmute and raise your hand. I see Mr. Co-Chairman Larson has his hand up.
So as I was looking through and thanks for that link to
Co-Chair, I think you need to your YouTube maybe?
I don't have a YouTube on, I'm sorry. Hold on. How's that?
Not good.
Becky was downstairs in the basement watching us on YouTube, and it evidently connects. So my apologies. So my question is, I appreciated the link you give us, Michelle, on that. And I was watching some of that, and I went through and I looked, and there's some resources from Colorado, and it just caused me to wonder: are there other states reaching out for these resources to use in as curriculum in their states as well? Are you having any requests for that, Terry?
Who would like to respond? Mr. Dugas?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, Co-Chair Larson. These learning objects and modules are available nationally through the PBS Learning Media. And we do not have usage statistics for a specific video or a specific lesson plan, but we do know, because these are available nationally, there are teachers outside of Wyoming that are using these resources. The ones that seem to be most popular are those in the Preserving the Ways section, which talks about the heritage and culture of the 2 tribes. But yes, these are nationally available to any teacher and any student at no charge.
Kari?
Madam Chair, Representative Larson, if I could just add, so one advantage of our Native American Education Conference going virtual this year was that we actually saw the largest number of representation from different states. So we had folks from 11 different states attend this year. And one of the things we got some very positive feedback on was on some of the materials that Wyoming PBS presented. So just from that alone, I can say that, yes, there are folks from outside of Wyoming that are definitely looking toward these materials to utilize in their classrooms.
Any other questions?
This is Councilman Fast Horse.
Okay, yes, please, Councilman.
I just want to commend everyone for their continued efforts to try and navigate and understand and try to think outside of the box of how to best make this a reality. Because again, it's not an easy task, because again, we're going against the grain of the natural order of how things have evolved with social studies. And so this is a very enlightening for me to hear all the efforts that are being put forth and the cooperation that's being had between other districts, other counties, and even other states. One thing that we have been advocating for on behalf of this change is we've been talking with people in Colorado. A lot of the education, different entities of education in Colorado, and asking them to look at that, because again, we're really forging ahead in the state of Colorado just the same, because historically that is our homeland. And so we've engaged and had some pretty good dialogue with a lot of different aspects of Colorado in the northern Front Range, and we have a lot of good partnerships there, and they're very interested in how they can continue to grow and expand with awareness, and again, being how would you say, history correct, and they want to incorporate and find ways to introduce to their communities the missing history, and so these efforts are right up the alley. And we've mentioned to Colorado that Wyoming is working on this, and that's a resource for them to look towards, and they appreciate it. And again, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been involved, and the tireless efforts, especially by our native teachers, to try and help make this what it could be and what it should be. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you for those comments. Any other questions or comments people would like to make? Mr. Dugas.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. I just wanted to briefly mention 2 additional initiatives that we're working on, which fall under this category. Just this morning, we had a conference call with representatives of the Wyo-Ben Mining Company, the BLM, the State Historical Preservation Office, and the Eastern Shoshone Tribal Historical Preservation Office. We are working to reach an agreement where Wyoming PBS would film a minimum of 5 Eastern Shoshone elders talking about the historical and the cultural significance of the Legend Rock State Petroglyph site. We would also record in high definition video some of the historical and cultural elements at that site. All of this footage, all of these interviews would be turned over to the Eastern Shoshone TIPO, and they would advise Wyoming PBS on how this content can be used in an appropriate way. Our hope is to develop additional learning objects, lesson plans, perhaps even a 30-minute documentary. But right now we are looking at this as a culture capture project, and we'll be advised by the Eastern Shoshone tribe as to how those resources can be used outside of the tribe. The final thing that I want to mention is that we have partnered with the nonprofit Native American Jumpstart. Recently, they held an event in Jackson where for approximately 4 hours, representatives of the Arapaho, the Shoshone, the Lakota, and I believe the Crow tribe demonstrated various tribal dances and various tribal drumming styles. Wyoming PBS recorded all of these, and we are again working to create learning objects, lesson plans, and perhaps a documentary that helps preserve and explain the cultural importance of dancing and drumming among those tribes.
Thank you for that information. You know, one thing that comes to mind, last year, I have 3 kids, and my, you know, they tend to be in that 5th, 6th grade range. I have watched them and helped them do the We the People program. And last year I had an opportunity to judge a We the People program at one of the high schools in Cheyenne. And one of the questions kind of begged a little further, a little more discovery or discussion about tribal sovereignty and what that meant. And so I asked a question of the student, and they took a stab at it. I didn't quite get it. And so as I was thinking about, you know, not just what we're offering here, but how we understand tribal government and sovereignty, I mean, I think is a larger discussion about how we talk about American history. And so I did reach out to the We the People national group, and I think they recognize that there'll be a time and that down the road, and hopefully soon, they'll revise some of their content. But, you know, they are looking for resources. I think they're always looking for funding and assistance, but just kind of just want to plant a seed that that's certainly an area where, as we're teaching high school students about how governments work and how federalism works, one huge hole in that is tribal sovereignty and tribal governments. So just wanted to kind of raise that issue and noodle on it as you see fit, but maybe we'll pick that conversation up down the road. Does anyone have any other further discussions? I think on our agenda, we were also going to have a discussion about the elk migration project. Did we cover that enough, or have we covered? We haven't covered that. Is that right? Oh, Mr. Co-Chair?
We have not covered it. I don't know who was going to update us on that.
It's on my list, so we'll see if we have anyone online who is going to give us an update on that. I see Heather.
Madam Chairwoman, we don't have someone in particular. We are listing several projects the committee has heard about before, and there's not anyone in particular with a specific update. The contact that we had for that project, I was not able to reach. Something has changed with that. So unless someone who's already on, who has been working with them, can update, we don't know for sure specifically about that. I thought that might be the case. I see Ms. Smith. Thank you.
Yeah, let's hear from Ms. Smith. Thanks, Shannon.
Madam Chairwoman, Chairman Larson, the Elk Migration Project was a major grant awarded to the University of Wyoming from the National Endowment for the Humanities. And this project is being run out of the university's Native American Cultural Resources Center. And at this point, it is James Trosper who will be assuming the mantle of this project. And the Humanities Council comes in at the end of the project. It's currently, to my awareness, at this point in time, there's a lot of research that's happening to tell the story of how the people of the Wind River Reservation migrated and followed the migration paths of the elk, and then tell the cultural stories of the significance of elk. After that, we will help them promote this and help integrate it into the Indian Education for All standards, and try to help get this more out into the rest of the state.
Very good.
Shannon, maybe turn off your video and see if your audio will just work. Sometimes
Sorry.
There you are.
Did anybody, did I get lost there? Did anybody hear me there? Sorry, everybody.
Lost where you said, after you said that it's a project to document the cultural ties of people following the elk's migration.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And so it is in the research process. There is a partnership between the NAE RCC and the migration the university's migration initiative, which is tracking deer and elk and the other ungulates. And so it's actually a marriage of those two projects. When this research is done and when they've developed the information about the stories, especially the humanities cultural aspects about the tribal uses of the elk, will help them promote this and help them help this project be converted into Indian Education for All modules for multiple grade levels.
That's great. Thank you for that update. Any questions about that, committee members or council members that we have? Okay, seeing none, is there anything? Oh, Pat, Representative Sweeney?
Sorry, Madam Chairman. It is Game and Fish, Wyoming Game and Fish, not involved at all in that particular project.
Shannon?
Madam Chairman, Representative Sweeney, to my knowledge, at this point, the research is going, that type of research is going through the university's migration initiative. And I do believe they partner in some ways with that division of this of state operations. I do believe they partner with that agency to do the research, but this specific project did not list them as a partner within the grant, to my knowledge.
Further questions? Alrighty, seeing none, committee members, thank you so much for those updates. We appreciate your time and being here with us today. The next item that we have on our agenda for today, and we're a little ahead of schedule, so I think that's a good thing. We are going to discuss tribal vehicle registration exemptions. In your meeting materials and online, you'll see a draft bill titled 21 LSO 0250 version 4. And we've got, I believe, members from the Department of Revenue, Department of Transportation, as well as the LSO to walk us through that. And I know Senator Case has been involved in this issue as well. So with that, let me look at Senator Case and see if he wants to take the lead on this discussion, or I don't see him on the Zoom, but let's hear from Heather Jarvis, and actually let's start with Director Noble from Department of Revenue. Hello, Dan. Welcome to Tribal Relations.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Dan Noble, Director of the Department of Revenue. Just learned about this bill about a week ago, and it really doesn't involve the Department of Revenue directly. It is a bill that is in the transportation statutes, and it is overseen by the Department of Transportation as well as the county treasurers. I think what may involve the state treasurer is actually the reimbursement of these fees back to the county treasurer, but it's not something that we're directly involved in. It does make reference to the veterans exemption in the exemption, but it is only to refer to it as to how the reimbursement occurs between the state treasurer and the county treasurers. Not really sure how much I can help you, but I can certainly answer any questions you may have. It's my understanding this bill and I believe Taylor Rossetti is the guy that's been working on it from the Department of Transportation. I'm not sure whether he's on yet or not, but that's about all I can tell you about it. It doesn't involve the Department of Revenue directly, but I'll certainly help in any way I can.
Thank you, Director Noble. I think generally when we have you on here, it's questions of administration. Is this feasible, and is it difficult to administer, those kind of questions? But if you want to comment on that, I'd be curious to know your thoughts.
Well, we do get involved in rulemaking and that sort of thing for the Veterans Administration of that exemption, and that exemption exists in the Department of Revenue's statutes. It is the veterans exemption is a little complicated only because of you have to identify what service members actually qualify for the exemption, and it's kind of a drawn out process in that respect. And it also involves an annual application by the veteran themselves in order to qualify. my understanding, the way that this one is written, at least what I've read of it, so is that on first registration of the vehicle, the tribal member will claim the exemption, and then they don't have to claim it again unless they actually move from the reservation, I guess is the way that it reads. Not really sure. I would assume that part is new language, so I would assume that there was some confusion about how that works. And this must be a clarification of that. As it relates to how we would deal with administration, it's really not up to us, but if it were handled like it is for the veterans exemption, we would be responsible for the drafting of the forms used by the treasurer for claiming the exemptions and that sort of thing. That's probably as good as I can get with it, but I can certainly stand by, and if there's something that comes up, I can certainly answer for you.
Thank you, Director Noble. And Mr. Co-Chairman, let me just see if Senator Case wanted to address this issue. I know you've worked a lot in this concept in this draft bill, so Senator Case, if you'd like to offer some remarks. We just heard from Director Noble about the bill.
I appreciate it. I had to take a constituent call, but I was listening in, and thanks to Heather for keeping me on track too. Actually, I didn't have anything to do with drafting this. I think it came about between Chairman Larson and working with Heather. So I'm listening more than anything. They did share it with me, and it seems workable to me. Basically saying you just do this once, and that makes sense to me. I don't see a problem with it, but I'm all ears, Madam Chairwoman.
Well, thank you, Senator Case. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director Noble, just a couple of questions to refresh my memory. Do vehicle registration fees collected by the county, do they come back through YDOT, or do they come to you?
Mr. Chairman, actually, the vehicle registration fees are actually property taxes. It is charged in lieu of a property tax, so it stays at the local level.
So then follow up. So then what is the requirement, if there is an exemption, is there a statutory requirement or an expectation that the local governments ensure that as an exemption is given, that they ensure that it's given appropriately, or that those who are paying? In other words, they are charged to collect the tax, and there's a statutory requirement for them to do so. And so the verification of whether they meet the criteria of the exemption is their responsibility to fulfill.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. I believe it would reside with the county as it relates to the exemption itself. Now, one of the things that I think this bill contemplates, and it actually did in its original, prior to this bill being drafted, is the county treasurer certifies to the state treasurer that this amount of revenue has been foregone, and then the state treasurer reimburses them for that revenue. So I'm assuming that there's some level of oversight there as well.
And Madam Chairman, that reimbursement is just a general fund appropriation, correct?
Mr. Noble.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Senator Case.
Yes, Madam Chairman, on that reimbursement, that goes back to when this first went into effect. Basically, the state decided to give this exemption based on the outcome of an Oklahoma case. And I think, I'm not sure who pulled it together at that time, but they agreed to reimburse Fremont County, perhaps Hot Springs County too, probably for the amount given out.
All right.
And that the Attorney General was Joe Meyer.
We're dating ourselves. Any other questions for Director Noble? Okay, we've got Taylor Rossetti on the line. Hi, welcome.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Yeah, Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator for YDOT. And I'll try to limit my comments to basically what you mentioned. Is this something that's feasible? Is it something that's workable? Because I think that's really where we ought to be. One, it is an existing exemption, and it is an exemption specifically for just the county portion of the fees, as Director Noble mentioned, which are really the property tax. So the state fee that these folks pay would still be being paid and is still currently being paid. So that's the key there. And in these instances of vehicle registration, we're all familiar with that is generally done at the county level with some state supervisory jurisdiction, basically how that is worded. So I think when you talk about the mechanics of this, it's very much like we've talked, right? The claimant shall file the sworn claim with the county treasurer. The county treasurer then, views the merits of the claim and makes the decision. And then if there is a reimbursement sought, it is sought through the state treasurer's office, as Director Noble mentioned. So that's the existing process, and the eligibility criteria, again, is in the bill. If people haven't read it, really the beginning part on page 2 between lines 1 and 7 really kind of tells you what that is. And it's an enrolled member who owns and primarily operates the vehicle that also resides on the Wind River Indian Reservation or the Indian country as defined in U.S. code. So that's your eligibility criteria currently in existence, and we're not changing that. We are doing, as Director Noble mentioned, us maybe going from an annual certification to a one-time certification, and then once you no longer can certify, then you no longer get the exemption. So as a matter of concept, that seems like a good way to streamline the process, as we talked at the last meeting. So conceptually, I think that that's a good idea. There's a couple of questions that I would bring up in the new section on page 3. Basically, the new language that's added there at the end of line 4 through the line 14. And these are minor and really speak to, is this something that can be administered? And they really speak to the way that the counties really step in and collect this revenue on behalf of the state. So that there's 2 questions that I pose, and really the county treasurer will have to speak to this. On lines 7 through 10, the actual statement that is to be provided on the registration document, I would just ask whether or not the computer system that the county is using is capable of producing that particular language. That language, I think, is good. It's solid. It does everything we need, but I would ask whether or not that system is capable of producing that. And then the other question that I would bring in, just as a matter of how this is truly administered, is on lines 12 and 13, where we talk about the department notifying the claimant of a duty to inform the department if the claimant is no longer eligible for the exemption. Conceptually, this may be okay, but in practice, the renewal notices are generated there at the county level. And the state does not have much of a role in that. Madam Chair, here in Laramie County, you would receive that from the treasurer's office here in Laramie County, and the state wouldn't be involved in that process. It seems as a matter of administration, if the county is capable of doing that it makes more sense for that particular notification just be part of that annual renewal notice that is already generated for a license plate. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rossetti. Questions from the committee? Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And Mr. Rossetti, as you read that new language on 3, it says that and going back to the language that you referred to that should be on the registration, requiring them to notify the treasurer within 60 days. But as you read it, what if they don't notify within 60 days? What?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, I do think that is possibly a point at which then the Department of Revenue might actually end up being involved in this question, because typically what will happen is if there's a question as to the nature of residency, ownership, primarily operating a vehicle. That's typically when we will confer with, say, the county treasurer. And we'll just work through the scenarios, right? It is very much possible that a parent owns the vehicle that lives in Utah, but the family member who actually primarily operates lives on the reservation. The owner is also an enrolled member of the reservation. And in that case, you can work through the scenarios and determine it's reasonable or not to grant the exemption. I believe in this instance that some of the other statutes that we have, specifically probably the statute that allows for the repatriation of vehicles that are licensed out of state. I believe that if the treasurer deemed a person no longer eligible for this, they would likely notify us. We could do a preliminary investigation and determination as to whether or not they are. But again, that would not be a proactive way to look at enforcement here. It would be a reactive measure, Chairman Larson.
Follow up, Madam Chairman.
Follow up?
But why even follow up? There's no penalty, is there?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, I believe at that point it would be up for discussion, yes, but I do believe the penalty would be that you would certainly have due whatever revenues should have been paid because you did receive the exemption incorrectly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jarvis, did you want to clarify?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify that the Title 31, which is largely the vehicle-related statutes, they have penalties, and they're not spelled out for each little infraction. There are chunks that say for any infraction under these articles or these chapters for which a specific separate penalty is not stated, here's the penalty. And I believe I called those out in some research I'm just looking for right now.
Madam Chairman,
Follow up?
do you recall, Heather, what those penalties were for for a situation like this, back to the person that doesn't report it?
I'm looking for that right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, any other questions from committee members for Mr. Rossetti? We have council members on the line. Would any of you like to ask any questions or have any comments? I don't see anyone in the Eastern Shoshone's council office. I do see some video. Okay, well, with that committee, how about we hear again from Heather? I think she might have an answer to our question, and then perhaps we'll spend some time just walking through the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the bill is currently drafted, the penalty would be the same as any other person who fails to properly register a vehicle. If it is the general penalty that's in Wyoming statutes 31-4104 and 31-1201F. So there's the general penalty, any person who violates any provision of this act for which no separate penalty is provided upon conviction shall be punished by a fine not to exceed $750. And then 31-2-201F indicates that the department may revoke any vehicle registration, certificate of title, or other authorization when the holder thereof commits fraud or knowingly provides false information on any application or in any process to obtain vehicle registration, certificate of title, or other authorization, or is not entitled thereto for a violation of this act following notice and hearing pursuant to the Wyoming Administrative Procedure Act. And then following revocation, any peace officer, department investigator, or special enforcement officer designated by the director to do so upon request by the department shall seize and take possession of the registration card, certificate of title, dealer certificate, license plates, or authorization, whatever was falsified, you see, and return the items to the department within 5 business days. That's the current, the committee certainly could address other penalties, and I have some suggestions or some possibilities, not suggestions, but if the committee wanted to look at some of those. Seeing none, shall I go? Oh, I think you're talking, Chairwoman.
We have Representative Sweeney who has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Is there any estimate on how much of how many dollars this would cost either YDOT or Fremont County?
Senator Case?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, it's not going to be a new cost. This is not a new exemption. It's been in place for a long time. We're just changing how it's collected. I mean, if there is you don't have to report annually. Do we actually think that it would have less collections because of that, or more collections because of that? I don't think it'll change anything. I really don't. So I don't think there's really a fiscal impact. I don't think there'll be a lot of fraud. I can't imagine it. I think we should do the same thing for the veterans too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All righty, seeing none. Heather, did you have a comment? Or I think you were talking about options on the penalty. I'm just kind of curious what you were thinking.
Oh, Madam Chairwoman, I was only going to go into those if the committee thought that something stronger than what anyone else would have if they had an improper registration is necessary for the bill. I was going to go into some that exist in statute, not for registrations though, just other penalties. The only reason my so I was not planning on talking about penalties any longer. The only reason my camera is still on is because I didn't know if you wanted me to walk through the bill draft, although Director Noble kind of did.
So we walked through it. Committee, we've got a bill that's been proposed that's on our agenda. Would anyone like to move that bill? Senator Anselmi Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the bill.
Okay. The bill's been moved and it's been seconded by Representative Clifford, who's just raised her hand on the screen. Committee, how about we discuss the bill and then when we're done discussing it, maybe work it page by page. Does that sound fair? Alrighty, does anyone have any comments about the bill draft that you have in your meeting materials? Senator Case?
Madam Chairman, obviously, we got to get input from the treasurers to find out if they're, or the clerks, I'm not sure who, but the titling system, I guess it would be the treasurers. We've got to know that it'll accommodate that language. And so if we pass this out of here today without that impact, we might have to change that language or figure out how to get that done. Maybe it can be a sticker or something, I don't know. But then, and then Mr. Rossetti actually had possibly some concerns about the language at the very end, and I'd be happy to entertain anything different there too. But I appreciate the work that's gone in this bill. I think it seems workable to me.
Mr. or Senator Case, thank you for those comments. I think, we haven't heard from the treasurers or, from county entities that would be kind of on the front line of dealing with this issue. We do have a motion on the table. One option would be to see if we can find or reach out to those individuals today and see if maybe we can squeeze this into our discussion tomorrow and just make sure that we've given all the thoughts and consideration. What would you think about that, Mr. or Senator Case?
Madam Chairman, I think we could probably get hold of the Fremont County Treasurer today, and maybe he would address this tomorrow. I wouldn't try to get him on right now, but do you want me to try to get a hold of him and find out? And we obviously kind of made a mistake by not getting him here to this meeting. So that's on all of us, but can I try to do that? And we'll see if he wants to address us tomorrow on it.
Yeah, Senator Case, I'm comfortable with that. Mr. Co-Chairman, you'll be chairing tomorrow. What would you think about trying to see if we can get the treasurer on the part of our meeting or at least get some feedback?
I think that that's fine, Madam Chairman. I think that we can do that. I think that it's would be unfair for them today to come in kind of on short notice, and so I think tomorrow is more appropriate. I will share with the committee that I went and sat down with our treasurer, Jim Anderson, and his staff, because my understanding from the last meeting was that there is a lot of, that there's some real conflict between county staff and residents of the county who come in and ask for this exemption, and they just didn't think that there were that many cases. And really, I best not speak for them. I just, I got the sense, my takeaway was they didn't see that the current way of operating it was problematic. That doesn't mean that they're opposed to it though either. That's.
How about this, committee members? I think Senator Case, are you on the phone trying to see if they'll be available to testify tomorrow?
I am. I'm trying to work through their calling tree.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break, committee members, and let's see if we can get an update from the county treasurers and see what we can figure out in the next 5 minutes. So let's take a break until 2:51. Hey, Mr. Co-Chairman, I think I hear you there with your mic on.
Just whistling.
Just whistling.
So we had this, we was earlier heard this big boom outside. I guess it must have been a transformer. We lost our power down at the office, and I thought it was going to come back. So I apologize. We had a little kind of weird day today.
Hear ya.
So I run home.
All right, committee, I think it's 251 Senator Case. Were you able to get some information to help us on how we should proceed?
Not completely. I'm awaiting a phone call back. I did talk to a gal at the treasurer's office. Mr. Anderson's working at home today. She wasn't comfortable giving me his cell phone number, but she's going to contact him and he's going to call me if she can get a hold of him. So I'm watching for that. I'm also trying to figure out the contact information for Mr. Chateau Day, who was here before as well. So I'm doing the best I can, Madam Chairman.
Thanks. Just having a few minutes to kind of think offline or about how we should proceed. We do have a motion on the floor, but I did forget to ask for public comment. So, with Senator Anselmi Dalton and Representative Clifford, if you'd be willing to withdraw your motion and your second, we'll keep this item open. Tomorrow we start at 8:30 in the morning, and our first items will be to call the meeting to order and introduce any relevant members, but then at 8:45 start with our law enforcement and legal services discussion. Committee, I'm tempted to just pick up where we left off with this discussion and see if we can conclude by around 9 o'clock or so, and then jump into law enforcement. Mr. Co-Chair, does that sound like a plan to you?
Seeing how as I am chairing tomorrow, I think maybe what
on your morning.
Yeah, that'll work fine.
Okay, so just to be clear, Senator Anselmi Dalton, is it okay, or do you withdraw your motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I do withdraw my motion and ask for the second to do the same.
I'll withdraw my second.
Thank you. All right, so we'll just put that on our agenda for tomorrow. So the last thing, committee, that I have is just making sure that we're giving staff some instructions on what we need and how we'd like to proceed. The thing that I had on my list, and Heather, I know you've probably been keeping better notes than me, is drafting a letter related to Corona COVID-19 funds. So to maybe the Department of Treasury about extending the December 31st deadline for when those funds have to be sent. That's one item.
Yes, Madam Chair, that's one.
That's one. And then I'm looking at my notes. What else am I missing? Mr. Co-Chair, did you have anything else that we should that we needed to direct?
No.
Okay. Heather, did you write down anything that I missed?
Madam Chair, I'm going through and it looks as though there are just several requests for additional information or follow-up information, some of which we have already received. And so I will go through and see if folks have followed up with their reports or with some of the information that they've given today. It was mentioned perhaps a letter to the EPA about you described that the committee would need to kind of have an email discussion about that before moving forward with it. And that's it, other than additional information.
Okay. Committee members, was there anything that I missed, or is there any other idea that you have in your mind of something you'd like to discuss, Representative Sweeney?
Not really, but I did notice that the Eastern Shoshone Business Council came on that video for a short time. I didn't know if they were still there or if you might see if they had any comments.
Thank you, Representative Sweeney. Yes, when I think I said that we see him on the screen, but there was no one in the room, but now I see someone.
They're back.
Hi. If you'd like to make a comment, just introduce yourself and welcome to our committee. Thanks for being with us today.
Okay. Good afternoon. There was some, my name is John St. Clair. I'm the chairman of the Shoshone Business Council. Beside me is John Washke. He's the co-chairman. We had some miscommunication as to notification for the meeting. I constantly check my emails and I wasn't aware until this morning that we were scheduled to be participating. So I apologize for that. We're very interested in the committee. And so we sort of missed the proceedings today. We'll go back through what the agenda was, and tomorrow we'll bring up any concerns or questions that we have. I noticed one of the items was the license plate exemption procedure, which we talked about in the previous meeting. And so I really don't have anything at the moment. Mr. Washington, do you have something?
No. Hello, Kale.
Hello. Hi, friends. Madam Chairman. So we are working that license plate issue right now. And there's a bill that we'd love for you to take a look at.
Okay.
Yes, Senator Case, he's correct. We have a closed discussion on that. We would like to pick it up and finish our discussion of it in the morning as well. So if you want to take some time to think about some comments, we can talk about it in the morning. But we are still working that bill right now. If you have comments on that tribal registration bill, we're still that's still open for discussion right now.
And Madam Chairman, if I might.
Senator Case?
Mr. Chairman, the gist of the bill is that tribal members wouldn't have to apply for the exemption every year. That in essence, you'd apply once. And if you didn't move or your status as an enrolled member didn't change, you would still qualify. And that's what we're trying to do with the bill.
Okay. That was just a follow-up from the last meeting then.
Yes, and Co-Chairman Larson worked on that bill, so I think he probably ought to talk about it a little bit.
Mr. Co-Chair?
We can explain to new members what's going on with it. From my perspective, there's no objection, but we'll get back with you in the morning. Did you send that to anyone? Okay, could you? The
Madam
draft?
Chairman, can we check with Heather and see, make sure?
Yeah.
Mr. Committee members, we'll reach out. We'll have Heather Jarvis make sure that the council has received that information. That's always a challenge when it comes to these kind of meetings. We rely on folks to spread information, and so please accept our apologies. To the extent that those documents and meeting notices didn't reach your inboxes. We'll have to do a better job of that going forward, making sure that you're aware of our meetings and what we'll be discussing. So our apologies. Representative Sweeney?
Sorry, Madam Chairman, do we have new contact information, after the elections? I'm just wondering if that's maybe part of the issue. I don't know. No? Okay.
Mr. Co-Chairman?
No, we have the contact information, and Chairman St. Clair and Co-Chairman Washke will ask Heather to send those to the email address that we have for you. But if you'd also be kind enough to look on the legislative website and go to our Tribal Relations Committee. You'll find all of the meeting materials there, and that might even be safer for you to do. Madam Chairman and members of the committee, I'd just like, on behalf of the committee, would like to congratulate Chairman St. Clair and Co-Chairman Washke for their election to the Business Council. We look forward to working with you and do appreciate you, your attendance and making your presence known here, even as late as it is. We were anxiously anticipating having you be part of this. I'm glad you joined us.
Yes, congratulations, and thank you for being with us. Okay, with that, committee, and just make sure, I think that wraps up everything we were going to discuss today. Just a reminder that tomorrow we are going to start meeting via Zoom again at 8:30 in the morning. We look forward to the discussion. Thank you for all your questions and participation today. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Have a good night.
Good night.